She said, "Please make it quick," and he looked into her eyes and couldn't do it. The alien woman knelt before him with her wrists bound behind her back and her silver skin glowing faintly in the dim light of the cargo bay, and she was the most beautiful creature he had ever seen, even though she was supposed to be his enemy. Her name was unpronounceable in human terms, but she told him to call her whatever he wanted. So he called her Luna because her eyes reminded him of moonlight, and now those same eyes stared up at him with acceptance of her fate. Kyle Martinez had been a soldier for 6 years, and he had seen combat on 4 different worlds, but he had never been asked to execute a prisoner, and certainly not one who looked at him like this, with such calm understanding. The war between humanity and the Sylvari had been raging for 3 generations, and both sides had committed atrocities that made the history books look tame, and Luna was a captured intelligence officer, which meant she knew things that could save human lives. His commanding officer had been clear about the orders, and if Luna wouldn't talk, then she was no use to them, and Kyle was supposed to make sure she never gave information to anyone else either. But something had changed in the past 3 days while he had been assigned as her guard. Luna didn't beg or scream like the propaganda said aliens would, and instead she asked him questions about Earth and about music and about why humans seemed so obsessed with coffee. She told him about her homeworld where 3 moons danced in the sky and the oceans were warm enough to swim in year-round, and she described festivals where her people sang songs that lasted for days. Kyle found himself talking to her about his sister Amy, who was a teacher back on Earth, and about his mother, who made the best apple pie in the whole colony, and about how he joined the military because he wanted to see the stars. Luna listened to everything with those luminous eyes, and sometimes she smiled, and her smile was sad but genuine. On the second day, she asked him if he truly believed humans were the good ones in this war, and Kyle started to give her the standard answer about freedom and survival. But the words died in his throat. She told him about the human bombing of Sylvari Station 7, where 15,000 civilians died in an instant, and she told him about the children who were killed and the mothers who screamed. Kyle wanted to say it was justified or that the Sylvari had done worse, but he found he couldn't lie to her on. The third day, his commander told him the execution order was final, and Luna had refused to give up any information, and she would die at dawn. Kyle spent that last night sitting outside her cell, and they talked until the artificial lights began their morning cycle. Luna told him she wasn't afraid of death, because her people believed that consciousness was eternal, and that she would simply move to another form. She said what made her sad was that humans and Sylvari were so similar in so many ways, and yet they were destroying each other over resources and territory and pride. She said she wished things could have been different, and that maybe in another life she could have shown him her homeworld. Now Kyle stood over her with his weapon charged and his hands shaking. She said, "Please make it quick." He looked into her eyes, and he couldn't do it. His finger wouldn't pull the trigger no matter how many times his training screamed at him to follow orders. Luna watched him struggle, and then she smiled that sad smile again and said, "It's okay. Kyle and I understand and do what you must." But Kyle lowered his weapon. He moved quickly, unlocking her restraints and pulling her to her feet, and she staggered because she had been kneeling for so long. "What are you doing?" she whispered. "Getting you out of here," he said, and his voice was rough. "This is madness," she said, "but you will be executed for treason." "Maybe," he replied, but I won't be a murderer." Kyle had studied the security systems for weeks as part of his guard duty, and he knew there was a small window during shift change when the cargo bay sensors were offline for maintenance. He led Luna through the corridors, staying in the blind spots and avoiding patrol routes. His heart hammered in his chest because every second they expected alarms to blare. They reached the escape pod bay, and Kyle began programming coordinates into the nearest pod. "Where will I go?" Luna asked. "There is a neutral trading station. 3 jumps from here," he said, "and you can disappear from there." "And you?" she asked. "And what will happen to you?" Kyle didn't answer, because they both knew. He opened the pod door, and Luna climbed inside, but she paused and turned back to him. "Why?" she asked. "And why are you doing this?" "Because," Kyle said, "and you made me see that the enemy has a face and a name and a family, and because I can't be part of this anymore." Luna reached out and touched his cheek with her silver hand, and her skin was warm. "You are a good man, Kyle Martinez," she said, "and I hope you find peace." Then she was gone, and the pod launched into the darkness of space. Kyle watched it disappear, and then he walked back to his quarters and waited. The alarms came 20 minutes later. His commander arrived with armed guards and fury in his eyes. Kyle didn't resist when they took him, and he didn't try to explain. He was court-martialed within a week, and the charges were treason and aiding the enemy and dereliction of duty. The tribunal was quick and efficient, and Kyle was sentenced to life imprisonment at a military detention facility. But something strange happened during his trial. The footage of him releasing Luna was leaked to the public networks, and within days it had spread across human space. People began asking questions about the war and about what they were really fighting for. Protests erupted on Earth and the colony worlds, and soldiers began refusing orders that seemed unjust. A movement started, calling itself the Luna Protocol, demanding accountability and transparency in military operations. 6 months after Kyle was imprisoned, the first peace talks began between humanity and the Sylvari. It took another year, but eventually a ceasefire was signed. Kyle was released as part of the peace agreement, along with hundreds of other prisoners from both sides. He returned to Earth and tried to rebuild his life. His sister Amy welcomed him home, and his mother made him apple pie. But Kyle couldn't forget Luna, and he wondered if she had made it to safety and if she ever thought about him. Then one day, 5 years after he had released her, a message arrived at his door. It was written in carefully translated human script. It said, "Thank you, Kyle Martinez, for showing me that even in war there is hope, and I have returned to my homeworld. And I teach now, and I tell my students about the human who chose compassion over duty." It said the war is over, but the healing will take generations, and perhaps you would like to visit Sylvari someday and see the 3 moons. It said, "I think of you often, and I hope you have found your peace." It was signed Luna. Kyle read the message 3 times, and then he looked up at the stars. Maybe, he thought, and maybe there was hope after all. He began making plans to visit the Sylvari homeworld, because some bridges once burned could still be rebuilt, and some choices that seemed like endings were actually beginnings. Kyle Martinez had been a soldier, but now he was something else. He was a man who had looked into the eyes of the enemy and seen a person, and that made all the difference.